I beat the crap out of the X-T5 for almost a year. Here are the results. I picked up a Fujifilm X-T5 in December, and since that time, I've used it almost every single day. Although I bought it originally as my backup camera, I quickly began to use it as my daily driver because I really love the camera that much. And it's been my go-to camera for all of my portrait studio work, for on-location corporate gigs, personal branding sessions, and for the majority of my YouTube content creation, including the portraits, concert photos, sports photos, and nature photos you see regularly in my videos. And I haven't babied this camera in every way because it's been very difficult to do that while involved in a bunch of complicated shoots. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you what I think about the X-T5 after almost a year of heavy use, including what seems to be one of the most contentious topics, build quality. What's up, everyone? Pete Coco here, and thank you so much for joining me as always. Now, I'd like to thank my new partner, Mint Mobile, but a little more on them later. The Fujifilm X-T5, like any other camera or lens that Fujifilm releases, is always met with a ton of love and criticism from Fuji fans, Fuji foes, and yes, especially from Fuji flakes like you and me. And so much of what floats around the internet is shockingly either not true or half-truths parading as facts. And a lot of what you hear about a specific camera comes from a person who's never even used the gear in question or tried it once at a camera store counter for 5 minutes so that they can go online and act like they're an expert. In contrast, I'm giving you my thoughts on the X-T5 as someone who has used it heavily for almost this entire year. So let's start with the elephant in the room, which is build quality. Now, when I first got my X-T5, I was really disappointed with the feel of the camera and the dials at first. It was smaller, it was lighter, but it didn't feel quite as robust as the X-T4. And I said this in my initial review of the camera and also thought of returning it, but I decided let me give it about a week before I send it back and really see how I like it. And I'm really glad I did that because after a few days of use, I started to fall in love with the smaller size and weight and the design of the camera. And the ISO, shutter speed, and exposure compensation dials, which definitely don't feel as nice as the X-T4 dials, worked fine, and only a little bit here and there do they move on their own, not nearly as much as I thought would happen. Now, there's one area where the X-T5 actually beats out the X-T4 in build quality, and that's these little front and rear command dials. They're much more firmer and responsive than the wobbly, easy-to-press dials on the X-T4. Now, I've watched some reviews where other photographers are having issues with things like shutter speed dials not working properly, the screen being loose, or other similar issues. And I can thankfully say that my X-T5 still works perfectly, and this is with quite a few bumps and bruises along the way. So here's a real skinny on build quality. If you bump the camera, it's probably going to get a scratch or a scrape. The first time this happened to me, I didn't even realize that I had scraped the camera until I got back to my studio later that day. I was walking around a lobby taking photos of some corporate clients, and I was carrying my C-stand in one hand with the camera flopping about on the strap around my neck in the other. And at some point, I must have bumped into the stand because it gave the camera two really good gashes right on the front plate next to the name of the camera. The next place I began to notice some wear and tear was around the tripod mount, which now has a worn-in ring from my monopod and my tripod. And there's a couple of other small scuffs and scratches that I've noticed too. Now, at first, these first scrapes really bothered me a lot. But since this is a tool I use to make money, a scuff mark here or there really isn't the end of the world, and it should sort of be expected. But I do think the black will probably hold up better than the silver, so I would advise you to get the black if you're really picky about little scuff marks here and there. Now, as Fuji users, though, I can't imagine that any of you care about a little scuff mark here or there on your camera, right? So my personal experience with build quality is that the X-T5 is capable enough to stand up to professional use and abuse, but it's going to show wear and tear pretty easily as the top and bottom plates have a sort of soft finish to them. But in the most important metric that I know for me, whether the camera works correctly or not, I've thankfully had zero issues with my X-T5, and hopefully I will continue to have a great user experience with it going forward. Hey everyone, I wanted to interrupt this video to share that I am now a Mint Mobile partner. Mint Mobile is the wireless company that's owned by actor Ryan Reynolds. And Mint contacted me a few months back and they asked me to try out their service. Now, as I had already been thinking of switching from my old overpriced carrier for a very long time, I was really glad to give it a try. And I was also a little apprehensive as to whether it would work well. So after 2 months of use, however, including a road trip to Tennessee from New York and multiple trips around New York and New Jersey for photo shoots, I'm here to tell you that Mint has been awesome. It only takes 15 minutes to switch, and you can keep your existing phone number and your existing phone. And the best part for me is that now I'm saving a ton of money each month, which I can spend on camera gear, and I didn't even need to sign a contract or purchase a new phone. So if you want to finally be free from your overpriced cell phone plan, click on the link in the description below and switch to Mint Mobile. Now let's dispel some more misinformation about the X-T5's 40 megapixel image sensor while we are at it and here correcting the record. Before this camera was even released, I heard people saying that 40 megapixels was too much to cram into a cropped sensor, whatever that means, and that it would be terrible at higher ISOs, and that you need to use optimized lenses or else the quality will suck. These were just a few of the many wild speculations and rumors people made before even seeing one image from the camera. Now, the reality is that the image quality from the X-T5 is superb in every way. Colors, the sharpness, the detail, the dynamic range, and the contrast all rock. I've used the X-T5 with a lot of lenses, including the 50-140, 16-55, the original 35-1.4, which is my favorite lens, and the images look excellent with all of these. I've also paired it with a number of Viltrox, Sigma, and Tamron lenses from multiple reviews, and I haven't found anything to complain about regarding the image quality. It's just awesome. And I've loved the images that I've created for my clients, my YouTube videos, and my family over this past year. But that's not really the whole story. In reality, the biggest criticism that I personally will level against the image quality from the X-T5 is concerning dynamic range. Compared to my full-frame Canon R5, and especially when compared to a Fuji medium format camera, which is to be expected, the X-T5 falls short when it comes to the overall dynamic range and the amount of pulling and pushing that I can do when it comes to highlights and shadows. Now, for me, this mainly affects me when I'm color grading my portrait work because less dynamic range means I have a smaller window to work with before the highlights can get blown out or the shadows become muddy. If you nail the exposure in the camera, this is less of an issue, and it's honestly less of an issue for most of the things I'm doing outside of color grading and the kind of moody portraits I like to create. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The autofocus performance on your Fujifilm camera largely depends on the lens you're using. Some Fuji lenses perform much better than others, and even some of the newer lenses don't focus as fast or as accurately as my much older 16-55 2.8. In fact, one of the best focusing lenses I've tried is the Viltrox 75-1.2. So I think Fuji needs to take note as they release new lenses for the X line. At this point, my personal feeling is that all of them should be linear motor, silent, fast, and accurate, especially if they're higher-end lenses. Now, putting that criticism of the lenses aside, I have had little issue with the X-T5 when it comes to autofocus speed and accuracy. With the 16-55 and 35, which I primarily use, it's been awesome. It locks onto eyes, tracks moving subjects, and gets the job done very well. Regarding eye focus, though, there are still times where the camera will show you that the eye is in focus, but the image shows otherwise, and this can be frustrating. Thankfully, this doesn't happen very often. It's few and far between, and as Fuji is very good about releasing firmware updates, I'm sure that's going to continue to improve and that the autofocus with the X-T5 will get better and better. Every mirrorless camera has its quirks since they are chock full of technology, and the X-T5 is no exception. The main quirks that I've found have been a random card read error message, which I believe has finally been fixed with the latest firmware update, and once in a while the camera will just freeze up and I need to remove the battery and put it back in the camera in order to get to work again. Now, I noticed this mostly while tethering, but occasionally I've had the same issue with the R5. Another quirk is the strange redesign of how the joystick works. You can no longer press it in to choose the center point and also select the point, only one or the other. And I have no idea why they changed the way that works, but I hope they heard enough of us griping about it and that they're going to just change it in a firmware update so it works the same way as the X-T4. Okay, so I'm not sponsored or endorsed by Fujifilm in any way. They do, however, send me gear to review periodically, but they don't have any say on my opinions of their gear, and I've really done my best to try and be accurate in my videos when it comes to my experience with their cameras and lenses. Now, having said that, after almost a year, I still love the X-T5, and I use it every day for the bulk of my work. I like the small size, the excellent image quality, the fast focus, and the easy use. And of course, the beautiful Fuji colors and retro cool design were the things that attracted me to the brand in the first place. But after trying a GFX 100 and also my experience using a Canon R5 full frame camera, I've really decided that eventually a GFX system is going to be the right move for me. Now, this is mostly due to the insane amount of dynamic range, which I already discussed, and the almost 3D-like quality of the images. But there is a noticeable increase in just the sharpness and quality of the images. And all of this depends on the kind of work you do, your budget, and your specific needs and wants. And this is not a secret to anybody. But for me, the GFX is really where I want to wind up some point, hopefully soon. But until I take that plunge and purchase a GFX body and lens, I'm very happy with my current setup with the X-T5 for most of my work. For those of you who are interested, I stopped using my R5 for a while, but I occasionally still use it for some field work again and for video work, depending on certain situations and circumstances. Well, I hope you found this video informative and maybe a little bit entertaining. As usual, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Here's wishing you an amazing day, everyone. Go out and take some awesome pictures, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.